My Victory Over IBS, the ultimate healing from irritable bowel syndrome you've always dreamed. By Arun Kumar Mishra. Introduction. Dear readers, irritable bowel syndrome, IBS, is a common but often misunderstood condition that affects millions of people around the world. It can be a source of chronic discomfort, embarrassment, and even despair, making daily life a constant struggle. I know this firsthand, as I have been through the journey of living with IBS and ultimately finding a path to recovery. In this book, I share my personal story of struggling with IBS and the steps I took to overcome it. I provide an in-depth look at the physical, emotional, and mental effects of IBS and explore the various treatment options available. I also share practical tips, techniques, and lifestyle changes that I found helpful in managing my symptoms. My hope is that this book will serve as a source of comfort, inspiration, and hope for anyone who is also struggling with IBS. By sharing my journey, I aim to help others find their own path to recovery and live a fulfilling life despite the challenges of this condition. I am not a physician, psychologist, or psychiatrist. The experiences reported in book are solely mine and should not be used in place of licensed, professional health care. Thank you for joining me on this journey. Sincerely, Chapter Arun Kumar 1. Mishra. Understanding Irritable Bowel Syndrome. Do you have constant diarrhea, and nothing you eat seems to help? Frequent runs to the bathroom? Do you have fecal urgency? Fecal urgency is a sudden urge to use the restroom. You may feel this sort of impulse within a few minutes after or during a meal. Do you always have a feeling of fullness and gassiness in the belly? If you are also having such a symptom, it could be IBS. IBS is a chronic intestinal situation. Even doctors do not have a complete understanding. It has been said that you will have to live with it for the rest of your life. IBS can have a devastating effect on your daily life. It has the potential to reduce your overall quality of life. IBS, or Irritable Bowel Syndrome, is a term that refers to gastrointestinal problems. Irritable bowel syndrome, IBS, is a prevalent condition affecting the large intestine. Cramping, abdominal pain, bloating, gas, and diarrhea or constipation, or both, are signs and symptoms. IBS is a chronic ailment that requires long-term management. I am not a medical professional, but I have had enough suffering in the last few years to understand what IBS is. IBS is classified into 3 types based on its symptoms. IBS-D. I suffered from this disorder. Main issue is diarrhea. IBS-C. Constipation. Both. Symptoms: diarrhea, constipation, bloating and excessive gas, nausea, incomplete bowel movements. And there are a lot of indirect symptoms like dizziness, back pain, muscle aches, sleep difficulties, insomnia. What is an IBS trigger? IBS triggers are various things that can cause symptoms in individuals who have IBS. A trigger is something that may worsen your symptoms. It might be food or stress. Nausea is that unpleasant, sickening feeling in your stomach that makes you feel like you're about to vomit. Bloating is a feeling of fullness and gassiness in the belly. Challenges and myths. Challenge 1. The most difficult aspect of IBS is finding a doctor. It's not like IBS is uncommon. Nearly 1 in 8 people suffers from it. Even doctors do not have a complete understanding of how to cure IBS. Challenge 2. IBS diagnosis. IBS is a functional disorder. It has no effect on the body's internal structure. Every test shows a normal report. There is no single laboratory test that your doctor could prescribe that can prove you have IBS. Challenge 3. IBS treatment is not as simple as taking antibiotics. Actually, medication is not effective with IBS. Even antibiotics may trigger IBS. Challenge 4. The most disturbing symptom of IBS is diarrhea. In the case of IBS with diarrhea, you may get fearful of traveling. Some people with IBS diarrhea have 10 to 15 bowel movements per day on average. Running to the bathroom can be humiliating, particularly at work or in public places. Challenge 5. Stomach ache and pain in IBS are comparable to giving childbirth. Challenge 6. IBS is a confusing disorder. IBS does not have a single treatment. There is no single diet that works for everyone who suffers from IBS. Medicine is ineffective in the treatment of IBS. Challenge 7. IBS interferes with your personal life, work, sleep, social life, travel, diet, and sexual life. IBS also creates a financial burden by directly costing you for medical expenses. Myth 1. IBS is all in your head. However, IBS is a real issue. It is a real medical problem with real pain and suffering. Myth 2. IBS is a psychological disorder. IBS is not wholly a psychological condition. However, stress and depression may make it worse. Psychological causes are not the primary causes of IBS. Myth 3. IBS cannot be treated or cured. My goal in writing this book is to break this myth. Myth 4. IBS may damage the colon. IBS does not damage the colon. Chapter 2. How my lifestyle led to chronic illness. IBS is a general disorder. About 10 to 15% of people in the world have this disorder. This problem is based on your lifestyle. Although I am from a North Indian middle-class family, my traveling job profile had spoiled my health a lot. I am vegetarian by choice. I had never touched tobacco or alcohol. I always thought that having such a habit would always lead to a healthy life. But I was wrong. My lifestyle and schedule, life before IBS. As an engineer with a frequent traveler's lifestyle, I spent the majority of my time on the road. Growing up in a middle-class family, I was always fond of good food and enjoyed taking advantage of the free meals provided by my workplace. Unfortunately, this resulted in unhealthy food habits, such as starting my day with a heavy breakfast at hotel buffets and indulging in street food without much thought. Despite the adverse effects on my digestion and overall health, I neglected my well-being and disregarded any need for exercise, yoga, or meditation. I was a foodie at heart and never thought to change my ways. My fondness for food ultimately led to stomach problems, including episodes of diarrhea and eventually jaundice and typhoid, which resulted in a hospitalization of over 2 weeks. Although I was able to recover, I continued with my unhealthy eating habits, leading to a recurrence of stomach issues and eventually irritable bowel syndrome, IBS. I believe that the repeated use of antibiotics during my typhoid treatment could have contributed to the development of IBS, and most of my symptoms seemed to surface after the first episode of typhoid. What caused my sickness? As a globe-trotting engineer, my life was defined by travel. From 2015 to 2016, I spent extended periods of time in 3 different cities: Chennai, Kochi, and Lucknow. In each place, my stay was characterized by lavish hotel accommodations, complete with buffet breakfast and dinner. Unfortunately, my love of delicious food and lack of physical activity eventually caught up with me. My daily routine was simple and hectic. I would wake up at 8 a.m., get ready for work, and head to the hotel breakfast buffet where I would indulge in heavy, fried, fast foods for 30 to 45 minutes. From 10 a.m. to 6:30 p.m., I would be in the office, only to return to the hotel for dinner at 10 p.m. On Fridays, I would wrap up work by 4 p.m. and take a taxi to the airport for a late-night flight back to Delhi. My weekends were spent at home, and on Monday mornings, I would start the cycle all over again with an early morning flight to my next destination. My unhealthy lifestyle and lack of attention to my well-being eventually took its toll on my health. I started experiencing stomach issues and eventually, I was diagnosed with typhoid and jaundice. The worst of these was the typhoid, which landed me in the hospital for 15 to 16 days. Even after my recovery, I continued with my unhealthy habits, resulting in stomach disorders becoming a regular part of my life. I strongly believe that my susceptibility to IBS and other symptoms is a direct result of my typhoid episode and the antibiotics I had to take. It's clear that my extended stays in Chennai, Kochi, and Lucknow and my love for spicy food and fast food were the root causes of my sickness. If only I had paid more attention to my health and well-being, I could have avoided these problems altogether. My travels took me from Delhi to the vibrant places like London, Dubai, Israel, but it was at the cost of my health. I had been experiencing some issues with my immune system, which was accompanied by persistent watery diarrhea. After realizing the severity of the situation, I spoke to my manager and informed him that traveling for work would no longer be possible for me. I started seeking treatment and visited several doctors, but none of their recommendations seemed to make any significant difference. Despite undergoing various tests and spending a lot of money on medication, I still didn't see any improvement. Frustrated with the lack of progress, I decided to try Ayurvedic treatment. After some research, I found a practitioner who was known for his patient and empathetic approach. The doctor listened to me carefully and diagnosed me with suspected Irritable Bowel Syndrome, IBS. He prescribed some immunity-boosting tablets and syrup, but unfortunately, my condition did not show much improvement. I joined my office again. Thomas, my manager, told me there was an option for a short-term internal transfer to Myanmar for 8 to 9 months. After a discussion with the manager, I accepted the offer. Thomas assured me that I would get a kitchen apartment so that I could cook for myself. Traveling to Myanmar was a good option for me. I stayed in the Lakeview Hotel in Yangon. The hotel had a good apartment with kitchen facilities. My office was around 2 kilometers from the hotel. So, I got a lot of time for cooking and exercise. I used to walk around 3 to 4 kilometers daily. After 2 to 3 months, my health improved. I had spent around 8 months in Myanmar. I also gained some weight. I started visiting the gym regularly. My digestion problem improved. At that time, there were many cases of swine flu. Even in my office, there were 8 to 9 cases. I just checked the options and got vaccinated. One weekend I was not in the mood to cook. My hotel was in the heart of Yangon. So, there were a lot of options available for Indian food. I bought some food from a street vendor. Nepali Bhojanala was the name of that shop. The food was delicious, but hygiene was an issue. Plates were not cleaned properly. After reaching home, I felt sick. When I woke up in the morning, diarrhea had again begun. It's not like a normal one. It's completely watery, and I had to use washroom almost 40 to 50 times. I had taken 1 day's leave. I saw some improvement, but my diarrhea did not stop. I became cautious about my diet. I skipped my morning buffet breakfast. I began with fruit and then skipped meals. All these things did not help much. Finally, I planned to get back to India. The major issue started 1 week after the swine flu vaccination. Perhaps the swine flu vaccination caused the onset of my IBS. Key takeaways. IBS is a very confusing disorder. Like treatment and diagnosis, the exact cause of IBS is unclear. Among the factors that appear to play a role are 1. Post-infectious IBS. It has been observed that most people have IBS after a history of infection in the stomach and intestines. This is known as post-infectious IBS. Infections could be the stomach flu, food poisoning, or traveler's diarrhea. Food poisoning is one of the major reasons, because bacteria can be found in any food source. 2. The overuse of antibiotics. Antibiotics are medications used to treat bacterial infections in humans and animals. They kill bacteria or make it difficult for bacteria to grow and increase. But the main issue is that antibiotics aren't good enough to differentiate between good and bad bacteria. As a result, even good bacteria are completely eliminated. Example of good bacteria is lactobacillus. It is a common bacteria found in the intestine, genital area, and on the skin that protects against dozens of potentially harmful bacteria and yeast. These bacteria can convert sugar into lactic acid. Lactic acid has the ability to destroy yeast and harmful bacteria. Antibiotics kill gut-friendly bacteria, allowing yeast and bacteria to grow, which results in serious problems like the weakening of the immune system and problems like IBS. Avoid using antibiotics that aren't necessary. Bacteria are single-celled organisms with the simplest body structure. Yeast is a fungus that grows in the form of a single cell. It has a nucleus and is more complex than bacteria. 3. A yeast overgrowth in your gut. A high sugar diet, stress, food indigestion, and other factors can all contribute to a yeast overgrowth in your gut. Incomplete digestion of food results in more food for yeast, which is beneficial to their growth. It expands beyond its boundaries in the large intestine and settles in the small intestine. It can pierce the lining of your small intestine. Because yeast produces toxic gases when it grows out of control in the intestines, it causes gas and bloating. 4. Spices, fatty foods, coffee, and alcohol. Spicy and fatty foods worsen the digestive system. It could be one of the causes of IBS. 5. Brain-gut imbalance. The nervous system connects the brain and the gut. Any imbalance may result in digestive issues like IBS. The autonomic nervous system, ANS, is in charge of controlling bodily functions such as heart rate, digestion, and breathing patterns. We don't have to think. The ANS handles everything for us. We can divide the autonomic nervous system into two parts. 1. Sympathetic nervous system, the body's fight or flight response system. 2. Parasympathetic nervous systems, body rest and repair system. Flight or fight means that when you are in real danger, you either flee or fight back. It produces a rapid heart rate, increased breathing, and increased blood flow to the muscles required to run away from something attacking you. The parasympathetic nervous system prepares the body for digestion, rest, and repair. When the signals to and from the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems are out of balance, the bowel becomes either too tight, resulting in constipation, or too loose, resulting in diarrhea. 5. Because of some vaccines have been linked to bowel inflammation, which can lead to IBS. There are, however, no valid references. Some point to remember. If you are taking antibiotics for a serious infection, make sure to take a probiotic as well to replace the good bacteria that are being killed indiscriminately. **** Probiotics should be taken 2 hours apart from antibiotics. Simple yogurt or kefir may have the same effect as a probiotic. Avoid too much spicy, high sugar, or fatty food. Chapter 3, Decoding IBS, The Journey to Diagnosis. After reaching India, I started visiting hospitals again. But in a developing country, it was difficult to find a good doctor. The doctor had never taken interest in the root cause of my problem. Allopathic doctors always treat patients like clients. I was looking for a reliable place where a doctor could understand my pain. At that time, my IBS was at its peak. The following were my symptoms: loose and watery diarrhea, insomnia, anxiety and depression, extreme weakness, fear while traveling outside, cramping, bloating, feel like bowel movements aren't finished, a sense of incomplete evacuation, gassiness, tummy may feel uncomfortably full and swollen, mood swings, nausea, weight loss, loss of appetite. Situations get worse when it gets triggered, and all these symptoms multiply tenfold. By this time, I had developed a strong fear of traveling. I had not stepped outside my house for a long time. Only for half an hour for an evening walk because of the bloating issue. Whenever I thought of traveling anywhere, I felt a lot of anxiety. Anxiety about how to manage diarrhea situations, including using public toilets and unhygienic places. I consumed only moong dal khichdi for 3 months. All the other foods were causing me problems. I was making a random list of my triggers. 1. Caffeine. 2. Certain foods, such as spicy or fatty foods. 3. Stress and anxiety. 4. Milk product. 5. Bread. 6. Gluten. 7. Fruits like watermelon and pomegranate. 8. Tea. 9. Potato. 10. Any seeded vegetable, for example, ladyfinger, brinjal. By the way, I never paid any attention to the useless suggestions. I got many suggestions from people on what to do and what not to do, but I wasn't sure how reliable the suggestions were, as they were from people who were not suffering from this disease, so they didn't know exactly what would work for me or not. Due to illness, I had lost my confidence. Warm water, pomegranate juice, home remedies, amla, and aloe vera had all been tried and failed. Every visitor in the house used to give advice and suggest the name of a new doctor or hospital. At the same time, seeing my face, everyone used to guess and diagnose my illness. Within a few days, I had a long list. Ayurvedic, homeopathic, naturopathic, yoga, worship, various types of ring stones, astrology. My frustration level continued to rise. I am becoming increasingly irritable. My mother was the target of all my rage. It appeared at times that I was alone in this world. The sickness was unknown until today. I hadn't always realized what happens when I had a sickness like cancer. I had been a vegetarian since infancy. I had never touched a drop of alcohol and was free of any addictions. I had never considered being impacted by a chronic condition. I started skipping meals. I felt completely alone. Eventually, trust in God also diminished. It was just my manager who was there to help me. He had offered me a month's leave and instructed me to return to the office only when I felt well. First hospital visit. I was getting nervous about going to the hospital. I spoke with my sister. She was an administrator in charge at a hospital. We were able to get an appointment with the head of the department in gastroenterology. I was terrified after seeing the food. Finally, I got an appointment from the head of the gastroenterology department. At last, it was time to go to the hospital. I had stopped eating food 2 days before, so that at least I will reach the hospital safely. There was only one wish, that I should reach the hospital properly and get to know about the disease. The next morning, I skipped my breakfast. I was getting concerned about taking a taxi to the hospital. I thought it was okay to go to the metro train because at least there will be no problem with the washroom in the metro station. I reached the hospital around 9 o'clock. There was a long waiting queue for the doctor. I had taken all the reports from my side. Finally, my sister also arrived there, and my sister made it to the doctor's office in 15 to 20 minutes thanks to her position as a hospital employee. I was optimistic about the doctor. I was hoping that he would see my case history and will take an interest in my illness, but nothing like this happened. He took hardly 5 minutes and gave me 20 to 25 tablets and advised me for a follow-up visit after 3 days. When I searched the tablet in Google, it was a normal tablet for stomach issues. It was my second visit. The doctor asked me, "Did you get some relief?" My condition had become worse, I replied. The doctor stomped his feet on the floor. It seemed that he was frustrated with something else. In the same fashion, he wrote some more medicine. This time, the prescribed medication was not available, not even in the hospital. He suggested some live probiotics and almost 11 to 12 new tests. He has not yet revealed or discussed any diet plans. My next appointment was after 2 weeks. I had to prepone my next visit. I was feeling very weak and getting faint again and again. Now the doctor's anger was clearly visible on his face. All reports were normal, there was a slight issue in the blood and urine. Thyroid and many tests could be done from blood, stool and urine were normal. The doctor went outside the room, tossing the foot for a while. It seemed that he had more patience. He persuaded me to go to his junior. The junior doctor, who was always sitting in the adjacent bench, seemed to be a star. He always had fewer patients. But in reality, he was far superior to his boss. He listened to me for at least half an hour. He discussed my lifestyle and food habits and trying to understand when this problem started. Then I was referred to a dietitian. But for the first time someone took my problem seriously. The dietitian gave me a list which contained a pre-printed diet. One good thing was that all the food items were light for the stomach, and it was advised to eat light at least 6 to 7 times a day. There was some relief from the diet, but bloating, insomnia and gassiness still not reduced. I went to the doctor once again. This time the doctor lost his control. He clearly said that I had no problem. "You are wasting my time," he said. I became enraged as well but managed to keep my cool. After all this, the doctor told me something that hurt me. The doctor said, "It looked like you wanted a medical certificate for sick leave. That's why you were making up false symptoms." After that, I swore I would never come to this doctor again. I thought it would be better to go to some fancy 5-star hospital. At least they would treat me with some respect. Visit to fancy hospital. Then I selected a hospital near my house. It's very fancy, and the doctor was very polite. But they repeated all my tests again. All the medicines they recommended were very costly. Every time, they made me feel as if I was suffering from a serious illness. My bills kept on increasing, but I was not experiencing any progress. During every second visit, they recommended a new test. Even after all these tests, nothing was diagnosed. They had suggested a new pill and a new test for every symptom I had. Fake doctor encounter. Finally, I understood that this hospital was not right for me. Suddenly, I received a call from my sister about an Ayurvedic doctor. This doctor was very popular. He came to Lucknow on a special invitation to treat his patients. Most of his patients were rich people. He was in Delhi to see how his patient was doing. And that person was sponsoring his to and fro flight from Lucknow and accommodation along with his fees. He agreed to start my treatment and promised to meet me when he would visit Delhi again. He was returning to Delhi in 2 weeks. I called him. He calmly listened to my problem, suggested that I should transfer 1000 Indian rupees to his account, and instructed me to send a photograph of my face and hands. He told me that he used to diagnose patients by looking at their faces and hands. I was very impressed and immediately transferred the money. He sent some medicine called Chyawanprash after receiving the money. Chyawanprash is an Ayurvedic supplement made up of a mixture of nutrient-rich herbs and minerals. After 2 weeks, I received a message from him. He sent his location and told me to reach him at 2:30 p.m. He mentioned that he was there to treat someone, so please be on time, otherwise, he would not be there. I called my sister, then we booked a taxi and reached there at 2 p.m. I called him, and he refused to meet and told me to wait till 2:30 p.m. Then, at 2:30 p.m., we arrived there. It was someone's house. An elderly man came in and told us to wait in the drawing room. The doctor was sleeping, he explained. The doctor arrived 15 minutes later. He checked my pulse. Despite discussing my issue, he informed me that his fees were roughly 10,000 Indian rupees, and he would courier the medicine to my address. He told me to pay the whole amount so that he could start treatment. You tell me what the duty of a doctor is. We were there for treatment. It meant that we were willing to pay his fees. However, he started his conversation with his charges rather than about my disease. I immediately paid the entire amount. He suggested I should start some exercise. My sister was also taking some Ayurvedic treatment from him. He made some big promises, like that you would be healed in 1 or 2 weeks after taking his medicine. After 2 to 3 days, I received a call from my sister. My doctor had sent my medicine to sister's house. It looked like he wanted to save money for the courier as well. I realized the reality of the doctor soon. He was very smart. He delivered all of the medication after removing the name and label. One day when I was not feeling well, I called him. After receiving my call, he told me to pay his fees. When I told him I had already paid the entire amount in cash, he was surprised. Then he told me, I will call you after some time. Then he WhatsApped me, I am very busy, so please message me. I asked him about my condition and how to take the medicine and follow the diet chart. After an hour, he emailed all of the information to my email address. I started my medicine, but I had not seen any improvement. He promised to send me a month's supply of medicine, but it's only for 3 weeks. He never picked up my phone, even on SOS. After 3 weeks, he called me and told me to pay for next month's treatment. I finally told him that your medicine was not effective and that you were not returning phone calls, even in emergencies. I didn't want to continue this treatment. Trip to Mumbai with my disorder. I was traveling again, and I had no idea what my disorder was. I boarded my plane and flew to Mumbai. I had not eaten anything on the flight to avoid an IBS trigger. An empty stomach always worked fine but resulted in extreme weakness. After working for 8 hours, it became difficult for me to resist food. With outside food, it was difficult to pick which one was good for you. Outside foods made my situation worse. My diarrhea was at its peak. I used to spend nearly 5 to 6 hours a day in the restroom. Within 2 weeks, I became very ill. I left food for a couple of days. Some suggested that I put some pulses in the coffee maker and boil with some salty water. I tried it, and this thing worked for me. Now I was in slightly better shape. I somehow booked a ticket to Delhi and boarded a flight back to my home. Yoga and mediation, back to my life. After reaching home, I started Googling my symptoms and trying different detox diets and exercises. Someone suggested I take the Art of Living Happiness course. But I was not in that condition to go alone. My wife booked a session for the happiness course for both of us. Happiness Program. This is an initiative by Sri Sri Ravi Shankar, a spiritual guru. It was a 4-day session packed with fun activities like yoga and motivational activities. It was really a healing thing for me. I made significant progress and began practicing yoga and meditation. I had made yoga and meditation part of my lifestyle. I soon saw the benefits of practicing yoga. My symptoms were under control. I started my Gurgaon office again. I got some assignments, too. Someone recommended that I should try some gastro hospital. My wife scheduled an appointment for me at the hospital for liver and biliary disease. Now my appointment with the doctor was also nearby, so I applied for leave and collected all my reports. Treatment at Gastro Hospital. This hospital was very professional and well managed. A well managed token system and LCD display, as well as a suitable waiting area. The hospital was a semi-government facility. The doctors did not have any targets related to the test. I visited the place with my wife. I was not in the position to visit alone. I got my turn in half an hour. The doctor was not in a hurry. He listened to me very carefully. He told me that it looked like IBSD or IBD. He wanted to rule out other possible causes of my symptoms. The doctor was very efficient. He considered my situation a challenge. He was not like previous doctors, who were only interested in making money. In addition, he gave me sufficient time to explain my condition and symptoms. We had the following conversation. Doctor, how long have you been suffering? Me, 1 year. Doctor, what is the frequency of loose stools and the nature of the stools? Me, 7 to 8 times. Doctor, any blood or mucus? Me, no. Doctor, abdominal heaviness? Me, most of the time. Doctor, vomiting and dyspepsia? Me, no. Doctor, do you have some weight loss? Me, yes. Doctor, alcohol and smoking? Me, no. Doctor, do you also have abdominal pain? Me, no. He checked all of my reports thoroughly. He wrote down all the details from my report, like HB 14.3, BIL 3.6, 0.99, bilirubin, FBS 84, hepatitis B surfaces antigen, HBs AG, and so on. He suggested that some tests that were older than 8 to 9 months should be repeated. He was an associate professor in the hepatology unit. He was taking a keen interest in my problem. Finally, the doctor told me to come back in 2 weeks with all test reports. The following test sequence was done to rule out all other possibilities. TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone, normal blood test, ruled out thyroid, chromogranin, a normal blood test, to rule out typical tumors and cancer possibilities, complete hemogram, slightly abnormal RBC, MCV, MCH, and RDW, endoscopy and colonoscopy ruled out any possibility of IBD and other diseases. CT enterography, whole abdomen. First, I had gone through the first 3 tests, which were quite easy and were being done with normal blood tests. During my next visit, the doctor told me that my blood test reports were normal, and I had to go for an endoscopy and a colonoscopy. Endoscopy and colonoscopy experience. The procedure was supposed to be done under monitored anesthesia. I was very afraid after looking at the details on Google. In layman's language, endoscopy involves looking at the upper portion of your digestive tract. To do this, the doctor inserts a camera attached to a long, flexible tube down your food pipe, esophagus, into your stomach, and possibly into the upper section of your small intestine. A colonoscopy is performed to look for changes or abnormalities in the colon and the rectum. A long, elastic tube called a colonoscope is introduced into the rectum during a colonoscopy. A small video camera at the tip of the tube allows the doctor to view the inside of the entire colon. My fear was true. The doctor gave me some bowel preparation medication. It is a solution that you will need to drink starting 1 day before your procedure. This special fluid clears the bowels so that the doctor can spot any irregularities during the procedure. Because the preparation causes diarrhea, a clear bowel will be present during the test. After having this solution, I went around 50 to 60 times to the restroom. Then, finally, I got admitted to the hospital ward and the procedure took about 5 to 6 hours. According to the doctor, the endoscopy was performed to rule out the following issues: acid reflux, gastroesophageal reflux disease, or GERD, and heartburn. Cancerous and non-cancerous tumors. Inflammation, such as esophagitis, gastritis, and duodenitis. Gastrointestinal disorders, such as celiac disease and Crohn's disease. Stomach, peptic, ulcers. Swallowing disorders. A colonoscopy will be performed to rule out the following problems: bowel cancer. A biopsy is also required if the test is positive. Other conditions: if there are signs of Crohn's disease, diverticulitis, or ulcerative colitis. The preparation time was very painful. I was staying near a bathroom so that I could go to the toilet easily. I was wearing elastic waist pants to make my tummy comfortable. I was drinking a lot of liquids after swallowing the prep to remove the unpleasant taste. Because of the uncountable diarrhea, I was experiencing a lot of anal irritation. Moreover, I was terrified of what would happen if the test came back positive. I was conscious after 5 to 6 hours. I got discharged from the hospital in an hour. We left for home. At home, we were discussing the next step. Suddenly, I received an unexpected message about my flight the next day, early in the morning. We had planned a trip to Goa 5 months ago. Hotels and tickets were already booked. I had just come to my senses and realized that this thought bothered me. How would I go in such a state? First, what will be the result of the test? Moreover, what will happen if the test results are positive? I could not afford to waste my ticket, hotel arrangements, and money on that. So, I made up my mind to travel and board a flight to Goa the next day with family. I was still having a lot of diarrhea and was definitely not in the mood for a holiday. I returned from the hospital at 11:30 p.m. and boarded the next day's flight at 6 a.m. I had not touched a single food item. I was only taking plain water. After a 4-hour journey that included 2 flights and 1 taxi ride, I was in Goa. I booked a hotel near South Goa in a nice resort. I became happy that at least my wife and daughter could enjoy the trip. I was keeping a lot of stuff, like 2-3 Oz packets, some raw rice, and a small rice cooker, which could cook some stuff even in a hotel room. We only visited nearby places and avoided any long trips. I avoided any type of buffet or heavy lunch or dinner and returned to Delhi after a week. I enjoyed playing with my daughter, and it also helped me relax and soothe my anxiety. Finally, my report also came. Fortunately, all my tests came back negative. The summary of my result was as follows: upper gastrointestinal endoscopy, indications dyspepsia finding, normal, normal mucosa, D and D normal, antrum normal, colonoscopy findings, PR normal, rectum and rectosigmoid normal, descending and transverse colon normal. CT enteroclysis, computed tomographic enteroclysis. With all these reports, I visited the doctor again. He suggested for one more test, the CT enteroclysis. It was a focused examination of the small bowel, or central section of your intestine. After you put fluid in your small bowel, it required a CT scan. The test's goal was to identify any potential causes of your symptoms. The worst part of this test was that it was done without anesthesia. I had to drink similar liquids again, resulting in a lot of diarrhea again. My doctor injected me with dye in a vein to emphasize the small bowel even more. Just like the previous test, I wore comfortable, loose-fitting clothing to my exam. During the test, it was necessary to change into a gown for the procedure. The doctor advised me to take off any metal objects, such as eyeglasses and rings, that would interfere with the CT scans. Additionally, the doctor insisted that any removable dental work and hearing aids be taken out. I was advised to wait at least 3 to 4 hours before the test before consuming any food or liquids. A long, donut-shaped piece of equipment with a thin tube in the middle, the CT scanner was huge. On a small table that slides into and out of this tiny tunnel, I was lying down. The electronic detectors and X-ray tube were in a circle opposite each other, rotating around me. A separate control room housed the desktop computer that analyzed the imaging data. Prior to the procedure, I drank several glasses of a liquid solution that contains a contrast material. The total amount of fluid needed to be consumed was approximately 1 to 1.5 liters. The fluid caused the small bowel to widen, making problems easier to identify. To determine the best starting spot for the scanning, the table was quickly moved through the scanner. After that, the table made a slow spin through the CT scanner itself. I was instructed to hold my breath during the scan. Though the scan was painless, I had some discomfort from remaining still for several minutes. I had a hard time staying still, was very nervous and anxious, and felt pain in my stomach. The CT exam was stressful. Finally, I received a result after 1 week. I tried to understand the report, but it was very complicated. Most of the places appeared to be normal. Just one additional remark: the spleen was enlarged. I spoke with the doctor. The doctor was kind enough to meet me without an appointment. He told me that I did not need to worry. There was nothing serious. They had not found any serious issues like cancerous cells, tumors, the thyroid, or IBD. They had ruled out all possible disorders. This was IBSD only. The doctor told me, IBS is a chronic condition that requires long-term management. There is no treatment for IBS. You can control the symptoms by managing diet, lifestyle, and stress. I hoped that after the diagnosis, the doctor would begin treatment and that I would be fine in 3 to 4 months. The doctor suggested I consult with a dietitian. I made an appointment with a dietitian at the same hospital. My dietitian advised me to eat more fiber, eat smaller, more frequent meals, and avoid skipping meals. This was my last appointment with that hospital. Now I know that I will have to live on my own with IBS forever. Key takeaway: even though my experience with the doctor was not good, it does not mean that all doctors are not good. I spent a lot of time seeking out a decent doctor who would understand my pain. This led me to believe that no one could possibly help me. Last but not least, I discovered a doctor who recognized my issue and gave me a diagnosis. It is truly said, tough times never last, but tough people do. Robert H. Schuller. Finding a doctor who believes IBS exists and pays attention to your symptoms is a key takeaway from this chapter, as is diagnosis, because diagnosis is critical in IBS. Understand that there are a lot of similar and even more dangerous conditions that have symptoms like IBS. 1. Finding the right doctor. It is critical to find a doctor who will work closely with you. You should choose a doctor who will give you enough time. It is nearly impossible to explain the density of your situation in a 10 to 15-minute session. Take your illness as a challenge and listen carefully to what you say. You may also ask your doctor if he is already handling IBS patients. Begin by consulting your family doctor, who could later be changed to a gastroenterologist. A gastroenterologist is a doctor who specializes in digestive system diseases and disorders. Avoid doctors who hesitate to provide the names of the medicines they are giving. Without a medicine name, you cannot monitor your medication for any potential future side effects. Rome criteria for IBS. According to the Rome criteria, if you have had abdominal pain or discomfort at least 1 day per week for the last 3 months and at least 6 months before diagnosis, and you have other symptoms such as bowel movements, constipation or diarrhea, a change in stool frequency, or a change in stool appearance, at least 2 symptoms along with abdominal pain or discomfort, you may have IBS. But as per these criteria, you may need to rule out other conditions like IBD and others with various tests. When nothing appeared to be wrong with your reports and all other possible diseases had been ruled out, you will be given a diagnosis of IBS. Reference: Canadian Society of Intestinal Research. Let us look for various tests to rule out the possibility of other diseases. 1. Celiac disease has symptoms that are similar to IBS. If you have celiac disease, eating gluten creates an immune reaction in your small intestine that prevents nutrients from being absorbed. It causes damage to the small intestine lining, malabsorption, which can result in diarrhea, fatigue, weight loss, bloating, and anemia. Blood tests can help with the diagnosis. It looks for antibodies in your blood. Increased levels of specific antibody proteins indicate an immune response to gluten. 2. Inflammatory bowel disease, IBD, ulcerations, tumors, and colon cancer. Endoscopy and colonoscopy are required for the assessment of all these possibilities. In some cases, doctors will perform a biopsy during these procedures to examine the tissue more carefully. 3. Lactose, fructose, and gluten intolerance. You can also have similar symptoms with these intolerances. The hydrogen breath test is used to diagnose hydrogen intolerance. You will be asked to provide a breath sample before and after consuming a specific food, which is typically lactose, fructose, sucrose, glucose. The glucose test is for SIBO or lactulose. The type of food you use is determined by the condition your doctor is looking for. Then you need to exhale into a machine that determines the amount of hydrogen in your breath during the test. Bacteria that feed on undigested carbohydrates produce excess hydrogen, which is being detected in these tests. 4. Stool analysis test. This test can also be helpful to detect malabsorption, the level of various bacteria, and yeast overgrowth in your system. In addition, based on the results of the stool test, the doctor may recommend additional tests. For example, if there is blood in the stool, which can be checked through a fecal occult blood test, the doctor may refer to a colonoscopy. 5. Blood test. Blood tests can help rule out other conditions. A CBC blood test determines the amount of hemoglobin and white blood cells in your body. It can aid in the diagnosis of conditions such as anemia and protein deficiency. Thyroid and chromogranin A, for the possibility of tumors, can also be tested using various blood tests. Depending on the severity of the symptoms, this list may be slightly longer. Like in my case, my doctor also recommended tests like CECT enteroclysis. So please note that. Do not skip the diagnostic procedure. Diagnosis is key to treatment. There is no single laboratory test that your doctor can prescribe to diagnose IBS quickly and easily. All tests must be performed to rule out other diseases. Self-diagnosis through internet research is risky. There are numerous serious disorders with symptoms similar to IBS. Learn more about the diagnostic technique and plan your preparation accordingly.